Plain and simple, Kareem Abdul Jabbar is one of the greatest basketball players in the history of the National Basketball Association. His former teammates and rivals have called him the greatest basketball player of all time.
Kareem swing left, right hand, 12-footer, good! The pictures tell the words. They love their captain. They love their leader.
He holds the NBA's scoring record with an awe-inspiring 38,387 career points. But his second act in life has been just as inspiring. Since retiring in 1989 after 20 seasons in the league, Kareem Abdul Jabbar has become an outspoken advocate for education, working to highlight the importance of STEM, or science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education. And in 2012, then Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton appointed him as an American Cultural Ambassador. Here to discuss the role sports plays in bridging cultural gaps and his role as a cultural ambassador is Kareem Abdul Jabbar, and we want to welcome you to Full Frame. Great to have you on the broadcast.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Our viewers probably don't know this, but early in my career, I was like a cub reporter for an LA radio station and had to go and cover the Lakers. And after a while, it kind of felt like Groundhog's Day. You know, it's like I ask the same questions every day, get kind of the same responses. And I remember there was only one variance. Sometimes I'd come up to you and say, Kareem, do you want to talk? And you were nice about it, but kind of from not tonight. And I started to think, you know, either this guy's an introvert, or perhaps he kind of feels like it's Groundhog Day, having to do this over and over again, or third, he was repulsed by me. So I want to know what's the answer.
Sir, I have no need to be repulsed by you. You're a perfectly nice guy. It's what you talk about Groundhog Day. We so focused on our careers, and dealing with the press is like very low on our list of priorities. So, you know, we want to get it over with.
Yeah.
And it's just more or less the whole idea of don't let anything distract you from what you're really here to do. And sometimes we get too much into that and don't realize that this is how we relate to our fans and the people who care about what we do. This is sometimes their only way to access us. And, you know, if you don't understand that, you can make some mistakes.
But, you know, the funny thing is, it's like I started to think after trying to talk to you on a couple of occasions that, you know, it's a weird profession that you were in. I mean, like a guy who's a plumber doesn't have to come home and when he's getting ready to go in the shower, people ask him, why did you use that pipe wrench on that pipe? You know, but with you, it's every night having it thrown back out. Maybe you shouldn't have done this or that. It does have to be kind of either a distraction or kind of an annoyance in a way.
It can be annoying, but if you prepare for it, it's not as bad as it is if you are annoyed and unprepared. You're going to have a really bad time.
But so many athletes have a difficult time transitioning after they retire. Yeah. It's like there's this void. You know, what am I going to do with my life? As a cultural ambassador, I mean, how much of a challenge is it? What was the feeling like when Secretary Clinton made you a cultural ambassador, and how much do you enjoy it?
Well, I enjoyed it. It was interesting because you go someplace. I went to Brazil, and people wanted to know what life in America is all about. They want to know from somebody that they feel has some credibility. They don't want to be the focus of propaganda. They want to know what's the skinny on it. You know, how does the United States work? What's it all about? And in Brazil, it was particularly interesting that they're trying to make Brazil a more inclusive society. They have a history of slavery and then a history of people of color not doing very well, only Europeans doing well. They want to change that. They want to integrate the society, and the best way to do that is through education. So the United States is working with the Brazilian government to improve their educational foundation so that everybody has access to the knowledge that they need for Brazil to become a first world country. That's what they want to do. So the fact that a black American could, through the democratic process, become President of the United States, they were very interested in that because they didn't think that could ever happen.
Yeah.
So the United States, by example, is showing the people of Brazil that democracy can work if you actually support it and you know, it's transparent and respects and tries to fulfill the needs of the people.
What about basketball as a bridge? Because I'm just thinking about the playoffs as they're going on. You got Dirk Nowitzki, who's from Germany. You got Nene from Brazil. You know, you just mentioned Brazil. watching Gortat from Poland. It seems like the NBA has changed since you got out of the league. It's a universal league now in many respects.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, it started my last year in the 80s. It actually had started then. There were a couple of guys that were from Europe, Hakeem Olajuwon from Nigeria, and that trend just grew because the game has become so popular. But it's an international game. I never thought it would catch up to soccer in terms of being popular worldwide, and that's happening. It's a pretty amazing thing.
And you look at China, Yao Ming made such a huge difference in terms of, you know, this explosion of interest in the NBA there as well.
Exactly. The popularity of the game has like really just gone haywire in China, and they all know all about the NBA, the stats, everything. It's a pretty amazing thing.
What about basketball? What does it teach? I mean, what are some of the messages you could take overseas about what you learn from the game and how it can change a person?
Well, teamwork. It's essential. You can't be good at it unless you understand teamwork, conflict resolution. You have to learn about preparation, understanding your game plan, and being able to react to the decisions that everybody else on your team makes in time. You have to do that in a basketball game. It really brings people together that way. It's not about individuals. It's what 5 people can do together. So I think for so many people who get those values from the game, it benefits them their whole lifetime. And it keeps you in shape, too. You know?
That's a definite bonus. And look at you, you're in terrific shape still. The other thing is adversity, too. I guess there's one thing that you can be assured of in life, which is there are going to be adverse situations. And,
right.
and I think the game kind of teaches you how to overcome adversity in many respects, right?
Well, to just keep plugging at it till the final bell. You know, when the horn rings at the end of the game, you got to accept it. You know, you got to move on.
Yeah.
And that's a very good lesson for people to learn also.
Let me throw out a quote, and I'm sure you're probably going to recognize it right off the bat. You can't live a perfect day without doing something for someone who will never be able to repay you. John Wooden. And John Wooden always had these great aphorisms. But in many respects, I think when you're going overseas as a cultural ambassador representing the United States of America, that sort of encapsulates what he's talking about in many respects.
Oh, exactly, because the whole idea of teamwork, there are guys that can do certain things and guys that can't do certain things. So you got to understand that. You have to understand your own weaknesses and get help at times and be humble enough to accept that. It really develops a lot of good character issues for people.
We talked about being a cultural ambassador, but you know, what I think is really interesting about you, and you could tell even when I was covering you, you're a really cerebral guy. You're not kind of the norm for a lot of basketball players or football players where you're just solely focused on sports, or maybe perhaps that's a blanket statement that's not fair as well. But the thing is, you've written books, you've been involved in documentaries. Did you find that you just like had an open canvas and somebody handed you a paintbrush and now I can create my own kind of other career outside of sports afterwards?
I think that certainly is part of it. And throughout my lifetime, there's been things I've always been interested in and wanted to try my hand at. And by doing what I've done, I've gotten those opportunities. You know, so I've got a chance to make a documentary movie. It was very difficult, but you know, living in Los Angeles, everybody thinks that they can be a filmmaker, right? And
they're right, aren't they?
No. Very few of them are right. But you gotta go through this process to find out. But it's fun and it's a challenge, and it's been wonderful just having those opportunities.
Well, you bring up the documentary. Let's watch a quick clip, and then I want to get your thoughts afterwards. So let's take a look.
See, these young guys think they make $20 million a year because they can play. They were just born at the right time.
The NBA, when it started, was segregated.
We really had nothing.
It was time to redefine who we are in the art, in music, in sports.
All the older guys, we couldn't thank them, you know, enough for what they did.
On the shoulders of giants. Come on.
The shoulder of giants, and I can't imagine you being on the shoulder of any other giant because you're such a giant. But talk to me about making this. Why was it so important to you?
It was important for for me to make this because people don't understand what we had to go through to get this wonderful NBA that gives everybody this opportunity to play this great game. It was a battle to get to that point, you know, and back in the 20s and 30s when the game just started, it was a totally different landscape, and I wanted to talk about that. And it's also an homage to my neighborhood. I'm from Harlem, and the Harlem Wrens basketball team epitomized what the Harlem Renaissance was all about.
So you start this process, and it's a journey for you putting the whole thing together. Were there any surprises along the way, or did you probably have a good sense of what you wanted to create even before you started?
There were certainly some surprises, all the stuff that I found out about Coach Wooden, you know, because he played against the Wrens, and, you know, I played for him for 4 years, had no idea that he had that connection, and we actually were connected through the Harlem Renaissance, and I had no idea about that. It was really fascinating to find that out.
What kind of a guy was he, and how much of an imprint did he leave on you and the kids who played for him, do you think?
Coach Wooden saw his ability to get control over the lives of young men as an opportunity for him to fulfill what he wanted to be as a Christian, to teach us good values and have us learn how to be good parents and good citizens. That's what he was all about. He wanted us to get our degrees and go out in the world and do good things.
How important was education to you in school? Because, you know, I think all too often these players see the dollar bill signs, and it's floating out in front of them. A lot of them want to leave college before they get the degree because the money's there. How important was education for you?
Education was very important for me. I'm the first person in my family to get a degree, and I was going to stay in college until I got my degree. That was something that I wanted to do, just because it was an important goal.
And education still is important. You were named an ambassador for STEM. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, those are the key subjects that young people have to understand in order to get good jobs in the 21st century.
Camp Skyhook has activities kids love, but our goal is to initiate and encourage their interest in STEM. Science, technology, engineering, mathematics.
So I'm working with the LA United School District to emphasize STEM education and give young people a chance while they're still in grade school to understand that if they want to have a great job and do interesting things when they get out of high school, they need to pursue these subjects, and it will absolutely help our country. There's a shortfall for engineers. We need all kinds of engineers. A great place to create and harvest those engineers is from the inner cities. Got a lot of smart kids there that don't understand that these opportunities mean great employment and great opportunities for them for the rest of their lives.
What about giving back? I mean, you talk about these, because I can see your face light up when you talk about that. Obviously, it's exciting to have a skyhook and to win a game, but I imagine there's a, you know, I always say there's the payment that goes in your wallet, there's the payment that goes in your heart, and I know that has to be a big part of who you are. Talk to me about giving back and how important that is as a feature of your life.
Well, what you talk about giving back is very important to me. I was involved in a mentoring program summer of 1964 in Harlem, and it changed my life. It gave me an idea of what my community was all about, and it gave me ideas about what I could do to change it, to make it better, and how I could fulfill what I wanted to do with my life. I had no idea about that. So that program was called HARU Act, Harlem Youth Unlimited. And it just enabled me to see some things that were really crucial for me at that time.
So I'm sure when you were going through that program, the light bulb went on, the eyes lit up.
Oh, yeah.
Do you see that in the kids now when you talk to them?
I hope so, you know, and we were so lucky. Dr. Martin Luther King came and addressed us that summer of, 1964. He had just been named Man of the Year. It was very, very inspirational to have him come tell us that to go on and do what you see needs to be done, you know, to get that encouragement from someone like him was an awesome moment in our lives.
What was it like to have his presence there? I mean, was he as awe-inspiring now in history? I mean, the legacy of this man. But I mean, to be a young man in the presence of Martin Luther King Jr., that must have been phenomenal.
Yeah, it was amazing. And the press corps was following him everywhere. And for me, I was in our journalism workshop. So they gave me press credentials and just put me in with the press corps, and I covered it just like I was a reporter, which is actually what I was supposed to be trying to do, you know. But I got to ask him a question. I mean, I'll never forget it, you know. It's that meaningful.
But you were kind of an introverted, kind of shy kid. It must have taken a lot of courage for you to ask him that question.
No, it didn't, actually. You know, because I felt like I was speaking for the youth in my community, you know. So it made me feel, I felt empowered at that moment, you know, to ask a question and be taken seriously by someone who was doing such wonderful things.
Do you remember what you asked?
I asked him what he thought about the program, if he thought it was successful. And he said the program absolutely was successful already because we were already thinking about how to make Harlem a better place.
To watch the arc, to be in a room as a kid with Martin Luther King Jr., and then to be walking around here in the United States and knowing that Barack Obama is president of the United States, to go from that moment to this moment, what's it been like to live that kind of life and see that?
It's been an incredible thing to see the fruits of the civil rights movement. You know, one of the fruits of it that black Americans now participate in our democracy in really meaningful ways. And that's not going to change. Even though there's still a whole lot of resistance, that's not going to change. I think that's an incredible thing. When, you know, I kept my cool in 2008. I kept my cool until I saw President Obama in Lincoln Park there in Chicago.
It's been a long time coming. But tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America.
And I thought about my parents, if my parents could have been there for that moment. And that's when I started crying. I saw Jesse Jackson crying. I started crying because he understood, you know, what it took for that moment to come to fruition. And, you know, I got it at that moment, just watching him. It was a very emotional time.
Kareem Abdul Jabbar, what a delight. Thanks so much for coming in and talking. Certainly appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
An ambitious architectural undertaking has become a cultural connection between two global superpowers. We'll take you to the center of it all next.